Okay, over to you, Ed.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone from all the parts of the world who have made time for this conversation. My name is Edward Wageni. I'm the head of HeForShe at UN Women. Just before getting into the conversation, it's also to say that we're having this conversation today, but also marking several key milestones and anniversaries. We are marking the 10th anniversary of UN Women. We're also marking the 6th anniversary of HeForShe, and the first ever International Equal Pay Day that was celebrated last month. Just to acknowledge that, the reason we are having this conversation is also the fact that despite decades of activism and laws, equal pay persists. Of course, we are earning approximately 20% less than men do. HeForShe, for those who may not be very familiar with HeForShe, is a movement that aims to engage men and boys for gender equality. And the HeForShe initiatives with the partners works with the global partners to create change, and that is to make sure that we are working and supporting the work that women movements have done over many years. Today, we are going to have two speakers who are HeForShe champions, which means as male leaders, they have made personal, organizational, and policy-based commitments to advance gender equality. And we look forward to hear from them on equal pay. I would like to remind everyone as you're here, please, everybody in the audience, please share your thoughts using the hashtag HeForShe and tag us at HeForShe. I would like to introduce our guest speakers today. We are very honored to have His Excellency Guðni Jóhannesson, the President of Iceland. We're also honored to have Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka, the Under-Secretary General and Executive Director of UN Women. Bob Moritz, the Global Chairman of PwC International Limited, and Winston Duke, the actor and advocate for HeForShe. I would like to now invite UN Women Executive Director to provide some opening remarks. Welcome, Edie Phumzile.
Thank you very much. I seem to have disappeared again. Can you see me and hear me? Most importantly,
we can hear you. We can't hear you.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much, His Excellency, Mr. Guðni Jóhannesson, President of Iceland, Mr. Bob Moritz, Global Chairman of PwC International, Winston Duke, actor and HeForShe champion. Good morning, everybody who is on this call. You are joining us today to mark very important anniversary. This year, we celebrate 10 years of UN Women. We are celebrating 6 years of HeForShe. I cannot believe it's been that long. We celebrate 25 years of the adoption of the Beijing Declaration, which is one of the most important declaration for gender equality, which was a game changer. But of course, we are also celebrating the first ever International Equal Pay Day, which took place last month. In the 10 years that we have existed as UN Women, one of the biggest lessons we have learned is the importance of partnerships and diversity. We, through partnerships, have been able to teach and enable girls to code, to train women candidates to take senior position in organizations and in politics. We have been able to fight against discriminatory laws and to enact laws that are enabled. We have been able to position women in the 2030 agenda and in the SDG. This would not have been possible if we did not have partners. We've also recognized the importance of bringing in those stakeholders who are not necessarily the obvious partners for UN Women. Private sector is a critical partner for us, and we've leveraged the interest that private sector have in the advancement of women and gender equality. HeForShe has enabled us to engage 3 million people who have joined the movement and the campaign. At one point, we have seen 3 billion social media impressions annually, which meant that many people were discussing gender equality and the role of men. But of course, that is not enough. We want to see concrete actions. We want to see people taking the same steps as taken by the champions that we have today who will be speaking to you. So we want to convert this access to a large number of constituency to concrete actions. Some of the ways in which we have tried to bring actions closer to those we are trying to outreach, it's through campaigns within HeForShe, such as #MorePowerfulTogether, which also reached 424 million impressions, and the HeForShe at Home, which was our campaign to address the issue of violence against women during COVID-19. The road is still long. The actions that still need to be undertaken require a comprehensive and a coordinated effort by all of us. So thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Duke, for walking the walk with us. Thank you.
Thank you, E.D. Phumzile, and I would like to request speakers, when they are not speaking, to mute their mics. And now I'd like to welcome His Excellency, President of Iceland, to make his remarks. Welcome, Your Excellency.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Greetings from Iceland. It's great. It's great that we're having this conversation on equal pay and the role of men. So let's just get straight to the point. And let's start with equal pay. 2 years ago, we introduced a law here in Iceland on equal pay in the workplace. And this was meant to enforce earlier legislation on gender equality. This was a positive step on the road we have chosen to take here. Now, allow me to mention as well that tomorrow, on the 24th of October, we will remember and honor the Women's Day off here in Iceland. In 1975, the women of Iceland stopped working. For one day, the women of Iceland stopped working in the workplace. They stopped working in their homes. In this way, they proved their invaluable contribution to society. So, forgive me as well, I'm a historian by profession, so I'll mention one more historical statistic. In 1915, women got the right to vote here in Iceland and to stand in parliamentary elections. We were among the first nations to take this step, but there were men who opposed this move, men in positions of power. A woman's place is in the home, they would say. Women, they're too sentimental. They cannot be trusted with state matters. Yeah, right. Earlier this week, there was an earthquake here in Iceland. Fortunately, there were no injuries or damage to speak of. The Prime Minister, Katrín Jakobsdóttir, she was in the middle of an interview with foreign media. Wow, that was an earthquake, she said, ever so calmly, in a very non-sentimental way. This is Iceland. Let's continue. So yes, let's continue. The law on equal pay in the workforce is a step in the right direction, but the gender pay gap, it's still there. Women's average annual income is significantly lower than men's, and furthermore, while the gender balance on company boards has improved, we see very few women as chairpersons or CEOs. Now, on the positive side, we have paid parental leave, affordable daycare, gender quotas, And these special measures have contributed to the outcome that for over a decade, Iceland has topped the World Economic Forum's global gender gap index. So that's a big plus for us, a source of pride. But what can we men do here in Iceland and all over the world? And in particular, we who are privileged to be in a position of influence or power. Well, I wish I could just issue a decree, but we've seen here in Iceland that passing legislation is not enough. We need to do more. We need to encourage gender-neutral upbringing. We need to encourage gender-neutral attitudes, gender-neutral workplaces, gender-neutral homes. And I must also mention other pressing issues, reducing gender-based violence, reducing bias in the media, bias in the sports. But in so many ways, we're privileged here in Iceland. In many other countries, the problems are far greater than those we are tackling here. Child marriage, lack of education, lack of representation, deep-seated prejudices. So the bottom line is this. We have equal rights. We should have equal rewards. And as a HeForShe champion, I am eager and willing to be of assistance in any way I can, to make my voice heard, but more importantly, to listen to others as well. So this was a brief overview of the issues as I see them, but now I guess it's time for me to stop talking and begin listening. I very much look forward to this session we're about to have, and I am certain that it is a good step in the right direction we all want to take. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Thank you for your commitment. Now I'd like to open the conversation to the panel, and I'd like to go straight to Bob. And thank you for being here again. And Bob, you've had UN perspective, and we've had the head of state perspective on this issue. So now let's bring it to the private sector and what it means. Looking at that 72% of employees believe that salary transparency is a good for business. So from your perspective, what do you think is the role of leaders at all levels of an organization to create a business imperative around equal pay? Over to you, Bob.
Thank you for the question, and it's a pleasure to be with everybody here today, including these wonderful panelists. And a great compliment to HeForShe for the efforts that you've done over the last 10 years in this particular area, and a specific focus on what we're talking about today, equal pay and the role of men. You're absolutely right. The business community has a responsibility here for dealing with the challenges we see in the world. The various megatrends have created a significant challenge in the area of social justice, the opportunity for inclusion, and specifically, as it relates to people, the issue around equal pay. The reality is business has a key role. Why? They're employing people today. They're going to be employing people tomorrow, their future employees, and it's determinant to their brand if they want to be resilient, sustainable, and actually be positively seen as contributing in a positive way to society at large. But the reality is, in order to get the positivity that we're looking for, both their sustainability and their contributions to society, they need to have more trust. To have more trust, you actually have to have much more engagement. And this is where, in fact, the issue of equal pay comes into play. As we look at this issue of trust, equal pay, and the role of men, obviously, we have a super majority, unfortunately not equality, in the area of leadership in the business community coming from females. So this is a challenge for the men to step up and lead the way. To do so, they need to create the right environment to have the right kind of conversations. They also need to drive change. To drive change, you need accountability. It's interesting, the World Economic Forum, along with the International Business Council, which is about 120 CEOs from around the world, PwC is part of this process, as well as our competitors, the other big four. we actually took a step back to say, in order to drive change, we should actually have a different reporting mechanism, one that actually focuses on demonstrating progress and comparability. It was in the area of the planet, good corporate responsibility, good governance, and people. The first measure that we put in that we expect businesses to actually drive for is the issue of gender pay equality. It's fantastic. Now we've got to act. We can't talk about it. We have to act. In order to do this, the accountability should be there. And this is why I think there's another reason for us to focus on this issue today, which is the activism needed. The activism needed to pressure and bring the force of change faster than we would get it under natural circumstances. And this is where the role of the business community can play an equal part, and all of its stakeholders are activists to drive change faster than what would normally happen. And this is clearly a big opportunity, a need for society at large, and specifically for the HeForShe agenda, an opportunity for us all to step up to create that change going forward.
Okay, thank you very much, Bob, for the elaborate and response to the question and providing examples of what you've done. I would like now to move straight to Winston Duke. Winston, can you hear us?
I can. I don't know if you can see me, though.
We can't see you, but we can hear you. So as you try to get your picture online, Winston, we know that the entertainment industry is not immune to this issue. There have been several stories of unequal pay, but also stories of male actors supporting female actors to ensure that they receive the right compensation. This demonstration of solidarity and allyship is critical. Can you talk a little bit about what allyship means to you? Over to you, Winston.
Thank you so much, Edward. And it's an honor to be here with everyone today. Your Excellency, Executive Director, Mr. Moritz, honored to be here with you guys. Great question. What does allyship mean to me? Whenever I think of allyship, I always think about all the different spaces that men inhabit and the different identities that we can have in those spaces, much like women. Men can be husbands, men can be brothers, sons, partners, bosses, employers, and we can be allies in all those different identities. It's far too often we operate too much in a mutually exclusive paradigm where we think that it's either we need the large systemic change so we don't have to worry about the interpersonal, smaller cultural shifts, or we're saying, let's just worry about treating people well. Let's just worry about treating each other well, uplifting each other, and letting the larger things figure themselves out. Well, we need them both, right? We need that they go hand in hand. So we need those smaller interpersonal things and cultural shifts to inform the decisions that we make to create the systemic change. So all of this is to say, we can start small, right? We can be allies in our domestic spaces locally. We can do them. We can empower our households. We can be allies at home to our wives, showing our children what 50-50 looks like. It doesn't have to be always the large, even though the macro is important, so is the micro, right? So for me, I think about how we can always be allies in a lot of different spaces. If the identities that you are operating in is the identity of a employer or the identity of a boss, there's a lot that you can do and a lot that you should do to shift the conversation and to dismantle these oppressive systems. You know, it's really great to hear what's happening in Iceland and see what Bob is doing at PwC. It's fantastic, and it inspires me. You know, once we realize and admit that the system that we've inherited is flawed, once we realize that the system that we've inherited is inherently unequal, then we can really dismantle the problem that we all face. You know, it's said that we've seen a big rise in women Fortune 500 CEOs, but we have to remember that for every one woman CEO, there are almost 13 male CEOs of Fortune 500 companies. So if we have all these male leaders, it is the responsibility of men in society to fly in the face of power, to go against the status quo. You know, it reminds me of the statement that women have to break through this glass ceiling. Well, if women have to break through a glass ceiling, it is the responsibility of men to drop boulders on that glass ceiling so women can climb and have equal pay and equity and equality in our world.
Okay, thank you, Winston, for actually reiterating what Madam Phumzile talked about when she talked about the recent HeForShe at Home campaign, which called at each of men at home to play their role in creating an equal world. So yeah, you're right. We don't necessarily always have to wait for laws and all this to be put in place. We can actually do it from our own small space. Thank you very much. Now I'd like to come back to Executive Director Phumzile. ED, as we normally call you, the UN marked its first ever International Equal Pay Day last month, which created an additional spotlight on this issue. But we know that more needs to be done. Can you talk to us about how UN Women has moved the needle forward in this space and what more you would like to see happen? Over to you, ED.
Thank you very much, Edward. Can you ask the person who is typing to mute, please?
Yeah.
I think it's a connection issue, ED. No one is typing. Sorry about that.
I thought some diligent person was doing their reports already. Yes. Yeah.
Apologies.
So, Edward, we have used our convening power which the UN has, and as UN Women, to really reach out to partners such as the ones we have today in order to bring all our efforts together for a bigger impact. The fact that we were able to get International Equal Pay Day adopted and a resolution passed in the General Assembly was a platform for us to enable this conversation to happen in all the countries, and that all the member states of the United Nations can be part of this conversation, so that people in the different countries who are advocates for this cause will be in an environment where their member state is already also taking a stand. But of course, a resolution at UN level does not automatically do it, because you still have to do it at a country level in a way that Iceland has done. Since and before the resolution, also with the hard work of ILO, we have seen many countries passing these laws. But again, passing the laws in different countries does not necessarily mean that we get the job done. So we have needed private sector to take initiatives within their countries where there is or there isn't legislation in order to move forward. And we went on to form the Equal Pay International Coalition, EPIC, and that coalition brings us together from different walks of life, governments, civil society, trade unions, in order for us to exchange experience, to monitor together what is happening, to nudge and push each other to move forward. And this year, 2020, marking the 25th anniversary of Beijing, armed now with the International Day for Equal Pay, we think that we need to springboard further. There's a particular and a special role for men and boys, for leaders who are males, to be in the forefront of making this happen. As Winston was saying, not to wait for the glass ceiling to be broken by someone who could even injure themselves, but to just remove this barrier and enable women to fit in and to benefit and to make sure that they are also able to realize the benefits of the fruits of their labor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Edie. As all the people participating in this conversation, we are beginning to get a thread, the conversation and perspectives from a state level, the private sector, the personal space, the UN. I'd now like to go back to Your Excellency, President of Iceland. As mentioned earlier, Iceland made bold HeForShe commitments to equal pay by 2022. With all things being on track, this commitment will be completed on time. However, we know that this will be an ongoing journey. What do you think will need to happen after this timeline, and what will be the role of men in Iceland? Over to you, Excellency.
Thank you. Well, you know, we will not have reached some final goal by 2022. As I mentioned before, legislation is one thing, and so is a great webinar of this kind and all the good accomplishments and endeavors of UN Women and the HeForShe movement. But it's a deeper issue we have to address. We will have to make sure, just like Winston mentioned, that this begins at home. I thought he phrased it really well when he said that if we can teach our kids how 50-50 division of duties works, then that's a great step. So I see the role of men not only as being the instigators of legislation or a change for good among companies, just like at PwC, but as role models wherever they find themselves, in the home, in the workplace, in the public arena. And in that sense, we will make sure that by 2032, 2042, 2052, there will be no HeForShe movement. It won't be necessary anymore. That's our aim, to make ourselves extinct in that sense.
Okay, thank you. That's a bold target.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Now I'll come back to you, Bob. Bob, earlier Winston spoke about what it means to be an ally and across an organization, including at a personal level. What would be your message to the men at PwC who want to know what you can do to support and ultimately contribute to the kind of culture you'd like to cultivate at PwC? Over to you.
Thanks very much, Edward. First, you got to go back to what do you want the culture to be? You want it to be inclusive, and you want it to have equality. And you want the people that are part of that culture to see and be able to capture the opportunities for everyone fairly. In order to do that, the men have a specific role to play, especially when you look at the demographics of an organization like ours or anybody else's. I use the word respectful agitator. And I'm going to pick up where Winston went. So if women have been trying to break through the glass ceiling, he's absolutely right. Men need to drop the boulder to actually break that glass for them. There's a few other things they can do. They can make sure it's safe and the broken glass around them in doing so doesn't cause any harm to anyone. And everybody benefits from that glass ceiling being open. The second thing they can do is actually reach in and pull women up to the opportunity and make sure they stay above the glass ceiling. It's an equal challenge. As I found personally, it'd be very personal, as I've thought about people in leadership roles and trying to create a diverse team, it's one thing to put them in the role. And we have tremendously successful women that deserve that opportunity and can do the role. There is no question that we have availability of women to do this. But we got to make sure not only they get in that position, but they are successful in that position. And that's the culture you want. Your second point around specificity around the role of men. I hate programs. But the reality is, without them, we can't get that accelerated change. We have to have them in the business community. We have to have rules and regulations if needed to help society drive forward the changes that we're looking for. We need that agitation for change. It's interesting, in the U.S., we actually put a program in place when I used to run the U.S., the role of the white male. And that was not only specifically to talk to them in a safe environment about what they could do, but also to make sure they don't feel like it's a win-lose. It's a win-win. And this went to the role they can play from a gender perspective, as well as the role they can play in all aspects of diversity inclusion, including the issues around race and other aspects of disability, LGBT+, and the like. Those that have this privilege, the authority and respect and responsibility, also have the obligation to do something with that privilege to make the change that we're all looking for going forward. And that's the kind of culture I think every organization wants to have. And going back to the president, every country needs to have. So this way the world sees and captures that opportunity for the upside that we're all looking for.
All right. Thank you very much, Bob. Coming back to you, Winston, most people support gender equality and want to see equal pay become a reality, but they don't know what they can do. You've already given us some ideas in your first response. But before we move to the audience for questions and answers, please, can you share with us a few more of the ideas on how men in our lives can support and take action? Over to you, Winston.
Great question, really great question, because action is exactly what we need at this moment. Action is exactly what we need to move forward. A lot of us have really great intentions. Intentions are fantastic, right? Intentions are great, but we need actions to move forward. We need actions so that we could start stepping forward into that future that we want to see. We have to admit that it can be daunting, you know, when we read statistics and things like that that say that it might take up to 250 years for us to actually see gender pay equity and gender equity in the world. But we have to start someplace. We have to start doing the work so that our children and their children aren't fighting the same battles that we're fighting today. So things that you can do. Like I said, the macro is important, but the micro is also necessary. Don't be afraid to start small. Start at home, start locally, start domestically. But coupled with that action is another action, which is educate yourself. Raise your awareness on this particular topic. Learn why it's important, and that it's important that globally only about 55% of women are in the labor market, as opposed to 78% of men. And learn why it's important that women lose out on almost $500 billion a year because of this particular issue. Think about how much women do for us already, how much women do for us in the workplace, how much women contribute at home, how much women contribute by the way they vote, how they spend for our economy. Think about the world we'll have if women had access to an additional $500 billion. That's the world that I want to live in, you know? So it's all of our responsibility, and we have to take that action. Become a part of the solution and not the problem. And another really big thing that we can do that a lot of people overlook is we can start talking publicly about money. A big problem is that a lot of men are completely unaware that this disparity exists, and a lot of women are not aware of how much they're actually missing out on, because men don't share the information. Men don't share the wealth, literally and figuratively. You know, I grew up always sharing my toys as a kid. I grew up always giving everything that I have, and I grew up into a man that realized the toys that I have now is my information. It's the wealth of knowledge that I have. It's my experiences. So I still like sharing my toys, and men have to realize it's time to share the toys. You have to share your information. The more we talk about this problem about gender pay inequity, the more it becomes normalized. And the more it becomes normalized, the closer we get to actually having gender pay equity become a reality.
Oh, right. Thank you very much. I think there's some things that, you put it in a very simple way. Men share your toys, and what that means in terms of equal pay and on a gender equality. You've also shared a massive figure of $500 billion. That is much more than the economies of most countries in the world. So thank you very much. I'd like to thank all the speakers, Bob, Your Excellency, Winston, and ED, Phumzile. And now I'd like to hand over to my colleague Dinal to facilitate the session on questions and answers as they are coming from the participants. Over to you, Dinal.
Thank you, Edward. Can you see me and hear me? Just checking there's any connection issues. Apologies for the background noise. There are some connection issues, so apologies to the audience members if you're having some noises in the background. So thank you to everyone for the questions that you submitted online or via social media for all of our presenters. So I'll get started. And the first one is for you, Your Excellency. And the question is, what would be your message to other world leaders who need to take more action in this space?
Listen to us who are in this panel. The aspiration to gender equality, it's not only a human rights issue or an ethical issue. It's a practical issue. Gender equality benefits everyone. If one half of the population is undervalued, if one half of the population is not given to the chance to show their worth, everybody loses out. The more gender equal a society is, the more happy and prosperous it is. So what is there to lose? That would be my main message. Furthermore, I would like world leaders to maybe this one is a difficult one. You must not really try to give the message that everything is perfect here in Iceland, but let's still showcase what we have done well. And we have benefited from greater gender equality. We have benefited from this emphasis on equality we all want to strive for. So if you want to look at examples of success, you can at least take a tiny look at Iceland, but we would also have to warn you that we're not there yet. There's still work to be done. There's always work to be done. And we will also benefit from getting voices and opinions of others. So that's why I feel that it works both ways for me here, to demonstrate what we have achieved in Iceland, but also to listen to what others are doing.
Great, thank you so much. The next question is for you, Bob. So we know that PwC has hundreds of clients around the world. What can you tell us about what you're doing outside of PwC as well to create impact in this space?
Yeah, it's a great question. Thank you. And it goes to the role, I think, of business, which the role of business is actually broader than just the bottom line. You've got to actually serve your stakeholders, and that includes the communities in which you live and work, and help the planet on an overall basis. First, in order to do more than just take care of yourself, you've got to actually role model internally. As the president said, we have to be humble enough to say we're doing some really good things, but I still am learning and we're still on a journey. And I want to be a fountain of knowledge to provide people insights, i.e. the sharing of the toys that Winston talked about earlier. And I also want to absorb that knowledge and continue to learn along the way. It was interesting, when I first got into this particular role, I asked all my country leaders around the world to do a pay gap audit. And there was a tremendous amount of learning from that, which gets to now the second piece of what businesses can do and what PwC is advising them to do, which is share what we're doing, and hopefully they can learn and help do it themselves. So we have an obligation as a client service organization, not only to corporates, but also to governments in terms of what works, what doesn't work. Let's accelerate this with the lessons learned that others have experienced, and we, PwC, have a great opportunity to do just that. But the third piece I want to focus on, if I can, is we have an opportunity to raise the awareness. We have an opportunity to convene groups of people. Right now, because of COVID-19, it's a crowded agenda with a lot of other topics. Getting vaccines to people. How do you minimize the risk, the economic impacts, and how much money is going to be needed for that? Oh, by the way, let's not forget, COVID-19 just accelerates and accentuates this particular issue because of the implications that it has on women and other people in terms of the other classes of people that are actually, unfortunately, negatively impacted. So we've actually got to raise our voices as well. So the other piece and role of PwC and the business leaders is to raise the awareness so it's getting the attention of governments, getting the attention of corporates, getting the attention of everybody, including our community leaders and the like, to have the right dialogues and learn from one another to speed up that change. So it's do role modeling inside and do the best you can, help others do the same, and convene to make sure that we're getting that change. And like I said, the pay audit issue is a great conversation by example of how I've talked to other CEOs about those lessons learned that came out of our exercise, for example.
I love that. That's great. Thank you so much. Winston, next question for you. So for the 500-600 people that were able to join that are online right now and listening, you know, there's been a lot of information. We've learned a lot from the various speakers. But if there's one thing that you think an audience member should take away, what do you think it should be from this conversation?
Great question. What I think they should take away. I think they should take away how urgent this all is. We have an urgent need. This is a call to arms, and we need all hands on deck to move forward into the future that we want. It's not a you or their problem. It's all of our problems. Like it's been said today, if 1/2 of our population isn't living equally, then we're all suffering. You know, we have to admit how much work has been done for us to just be here today. You know, our forefathers and foremothers had to protest, fight, get laws passed just so that we could all be sharing space together, no matter the color, creed, or background that we come from. And it's our job to pick up the baton and move it forward so that our kids can move it forward for their own children. You know, if we look at this all as a house, our forefathers did the specs for the house. We have to build it. Our children have to furnish it, and their children can then live in a home where equity and equality is in the foundation. We need that to happen. We need everyone to participate. This is an urgent need. And it's all of our business. And at a time when we're in a global pandemic, where we all can see that for us all to survive, we have to take care of each other. You can't just take care of yourself. You have to take care of each other. So the thing that we need to have become contagious out of this is equal pay, is gender and gender equity and equality. That needs to be the next pandemic that the world sees. We need to all be a part of that. So let's make gender equality and equity contagious. That's what I want people to take from this.
Fantastic, thank you. That's the soundbite for this session. Should be contagious. Thank you. Your Excellency, back to you again, if I may. The next question is, how can leaders ensure, you know, we've talked about this global pandemic going on and how this exacerbates these kinds of issues. What can leaders do in this scenario where, you know, the cause of equal pay isn't forgotten about? What can they do?
Yeah, well, I hope everyone who's listening is safe, and it was nice, in a sense, to hear the word contagious used in a positive way now. In these difficult days of COVID-19, we can maybe make sure that the cause of gender equality is not forgotten by looking at all the women who are helping us all, the female doctors, the female nurses, the female police officers, the female scientists who are working on a vaccine and other remedies, all the women who are in this with us men, because we're in this together. The virus does not differentiate between men and women unless there's some research I've seen where, you know, some aspects of it may hit one gender more than the other, but we're in this business together. So we can make sure that the cause of gender equality, the cause of human rights in general, are not forgotten by keeping in mind that it has hit us together and the solution lies in solidarity. So that would be my short answer to that.
Great, thank you so much. And a couple of last questions. So coming back to you, Bob, we had a question from a female employee at PwC. We've talked about, you know, the role of men, but we also talked about solidarity as well. So this female employee is asking, how can she also contribute to this issue? Yeah, to be very clear at a high level, what Winston, myself, the executive director, and the president have spoken about so far is not just a message for men. It's a message for everybody. So some of the themes and the concepts we're talking about apply to women also. So a couple of things as we think about the females that are listening in. You are an agent for change. We're actually talking to the converted here today, probably, right? So what we want to do is make sure you have the confidence to lean in more so to the conversations and to have the confidence in yourself to be able to have those conversations about how you deserve equal pay if you're not getting it. And you should actually think about how you do that and what support mechanisms you need. So that's the part about taking care of yourself. The second part here, and Sheryl Sandberg and others have talked about this in terms of the ability to lean in with confidence as you think about some of the objectives that are there. The second piece is how do you actually help other women do the same? And third is to make sure that you're, again, I'll use the words respectfully challenging, agitating, whatever it may be, the men in your organizations, PwC included, to make sure that they are having these hard conversations. It's uncomfortable, but it's needed. We're never going to make the progress unless we have the uncomfortable conversations. But in having those uncomfortable conversations, we make sure it's a win-win. A lot of times when people talk about this issue or the issue of diversity and inclusion, people assume it's a win-lose. If you get more, I get less. And we've got to make sure that the paradigm that we're talking about is win-win. And Winston went to it, right? The benefit of $500 billion more in the system for better pay means more consumption. It means a better economy. It means a more inclusive society. And it means all of us benefit from that. And that's the kind of connotation we want to have in the dialogue. And the women can help be that agitator. The last point I want to make is in the last, call it 5 years or so in particular, taking the pandemic out of this issue for a second, we've seen a tremendous amount of what we call activism, mostly financial activism up until the last couple of years. Now we're getting a lot of social activism. One of the biggest forms of activism is the employee activism. Employees having a bigger voice in terms of what is the strategy of an organization, the values of an organization, the behaviors one should expect from those organizations. And if they don't see them, they will walk. And those organizations need to realize that they are no longer sustainable. So bringing that kind of activism is a really big, important role for the women to play, but do not go it alone and bring the men along for the ride. That's great. Thank you so much, Bob. And final question for you, Winston, if I may. So, Edward mentioned a little earlier around what we've been seeing in the entertainment industry, and we know that this, the entertainment industry is not immune to this issue. What do you think needs to happen in terms of changes when it comes to equal pay in the industry?
A lot of different things can be done, but one immediate thing, and borrowing the idea that Bob just talked about, which is how uncomfortable these conversations can be. The entertainment industry tends to feel very uncomfortable when it comes to talking about how much people make and how much men make in particular. And that's just something we have to get over immediately. We have to start demystifying all of the financial schemes and schematics of how our business works and who makes what and when. And that's going to be something that creates a large ripple and helps to change a lot of the culture around this, around pay equity and equal pay. Another thing is that mostly the people who are championing this issue in my industry are the women, and we need more men. We need more men to come together. We need to start a coalition of actors of complete different representations, different portrayals of masculinity. And we need to all unify and show that we all support the women that we work with. We need to also see more women leaders. We need more women CEOs, CFOs of the large studios. We need more female department heads. And I think once we start just getting a lot of those things done, we'll see major shifts happen from the top to the bottom. So we need unity, and we need clarity and openness.
That's great. Thank you so much. Really, really great inputs. Thank you. So in the last 2 minutes that we have left, I just want to invite our presenters, speakers, for any closing comments, any final remarks that you might have that you want to share. Your Excellency, I'll come to you first.
Thank you very much. I have benefited a lot from this conversation. I have learned about the attitudes of my co-speakers, and I think we're in this together. So let's just make sure that the next session of this kind will have one sort of subline. Since we last met, we've made progress. The gender pay gap is slowly but surely being reduced here in Iceland. But if we continue at the same pace, I think we will see total parity by, somebody said 2068. So we need to move on. We need to go faster. And I think a conversation of this kind will make us realize that it is in everybody's interest to accelerate. I like competition of all kinds, but I don't like a competition where I can see myself that the people who I am competing with have an unfair advantage. So let's level the playing field to the benefit of us all, when we can all show and demonstrate our worth to the benefit of ourselves and society as a whole. This should be our aim, and therefore I am happy to go outside into the howling wind and rain we're facing here in Iceland, because I'm full of optimism now. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency. Bob, any final remarks from you?
To the women in the room, don't go it alone, and you're absolutely not alone in this fight. To the men in the room, thank you very much for your interest, your participation, and being part of this dialogue. That's the concept of HeForShe. Let's continue that, but let's take the 500 or 600 that are watching this and expand this more so. This conversation probably was enlightening to many on the call, but candidly, you're already probably interested and active in making change. Our job leaving this call is to get others to do the same. And that's my ask and my hope as we talk about the progress that the president just asked for as we get together the next time around.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And last but not least, Winston, any final remarks?
I'm just honored to be a part of this group. I'm honored to be, counted with such strong men and such strong allies to this. And it gives me a lot of confidence to be in a space such as this. But it makes me reflect on a lot of the young men who this type of thinking and this mode of thought isn't always the most comfortable and the most supported. And I want to let those young men know out there that it's okay to be an ally and keep supporting and keep fighting and moving on and moving forward in this fashion. It's sometimes can feel like a lonely road. I was at Sundance Film Festival right before the world shut down. And we were premiering a movie, and I was talking to the audience after, and this young guy who was a freshman in college came up to me and told me that, he was listening to me and listened to the speech I gave last time at the UN, and it made him feel like there was someone else out there who shared his beliefs. So I just want to speak to young men like that sometimes feel alone in this struggle and in this fight, but can see the future that they want to be a part of. You're not alone. There are other men out there who think the same way, and you're going to be on the right side of history. So keep moving, keep fighting.
Great final remarks. Thank you so much. Thank you to all of our presenters and the ED who unfortunately had to leave a little early. Thank you so much for everybody taking your time, and to all of the audience members for participating in this conversation. Please share your thoughts online using the hashtag HeForShe and tag us as well at HeForShe. You will receive an email with a recording of this session if you want to send it to anybody who might not have been able to join. And thank you so much, everybody, and we look forward to seeing you at the next session. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.